Even though these days I feel a little bit jaded in relation to a lot of the romance offerings that I find on Netflix and Amazon Prime. Because I was taking a break from work, I decided that I would try out the new series Maxton Hall, The World Between Us, that was on offer on Amazon Prime. It is a six-part German language series, originally titled Maxton Hall, Die Welt zwischen uns. It is adapted from the Mona Kasten book Save Me, which is in turn part of a three-part series. The next two books in the series are Save Me and Save Us. At present, at the time of recording this, which is the 11th of May, the books are in German only. As far as I can tell, based on my searching, they are not yet translated into English. I do not think this state of affairs will last long, and I am positive that English language versions will come out very, very quickly because this series is going to be a hit. The fact that the English books weren't available on Amazon, which started out as a book publishing business and would have been the prime location for the books to be released, is another hint to me that Amazon was not prepared or ready for the fact that this series is likely to be extremely well received by its demographic audience. The series is available in the original German with subtitles, or it's dubbed into English accents. I strongly recommend that you watch in the original German with subtitles. I'll go into this more when I discuss the series in a little bit more detail, but all I can say is that there is so much nuance that you will lose from the original acting if you watch it in the dubbed version. The original actors are amazing. They deserve more than just to be pretty faces on a page. You deserve to see their full acting abilities, from their body language to the sound of their voice and the way they form the words. So even if you have only seen the English dubbing, I really do recommend that you watch the original performance. As mentioned, I enjoyed this series hugely. I didn't expect to. I am a romance fan from the time I was in high school, maybe younger. I've consumed so much romantic literature and media. I think all romance fans have watched this particular storyline that you'll see addressed in this series. We've seen this plot, these characters, 1,000 times before. But as a romance fan, we generally don't have the quasi-snobby loathing that a lot of people in other genres have about tropes. In fact, we in the romance corner, we like tropes. We all have tropes that we like a lot, myself included. The issue is we want the tropes done well. I think the misnomer is that people often assume that because you're a romance reader, you don't have any taste and you just like bad tropes. That's not the case at all. We've got certain elements that we like in our stories, and we want to see them portrayed in a way that seems genuine, sincere, and creates engagement. I unfortunately can't go into the tropes in detail in this particular review because that would involve spoiling. And again, I know that spoilers are generally not as bad for a romance reader as they are for people in other genres, but I don't feel right spoiling this particular series. So if I have time, I will do a spoiler review so I can discuss the tropes in more detail. But suffice to say, part of the reason I felt incredibly satisfied by this series was because, in my opinion, it did the tropes really well and surprised me, even though I would say that I didn't realize I was still capable of being surprised. That being said, this is an already extremely crowded area of the market. The romance genre is so crowded. It's going to get even more crowded because a series like this, it's already put together using the elements of so many other stories. because of its eventual success, it's in turn going to get deconstructed as if the secret to why it is good is a secret. The thing is, it's not. So now I'm going to go into the fact that although there was really nothing new about this series, I still loved it and it felt fresh to me. And as soon as I finished it, I wanted to know more about the characters. I wanted to read the books. I just watched it again because I just didn't want to leave the world. So I'll go through the elements of why I think I loved it. First of all, there were great main characters. That is really important in this particular type of genre. Too frequently, the main female character and the main male character are actually insufferable. They are always extremely good looking. They are supposed to be smart, but their behavior doesn't tend to indicate any form of intelligence. They're supposed to be attractive, but unfortunately, attractiveness is usually almost entirely defined by their physical appearance, and their personalities and their intellect are so lacking that for me they become unattractive. So I think that's a mistake that a lot of these sorts of stories tend to tell. They tell us a story and a relationship between two people who are essentially beautiful cutouts that are extremely two dimensional, and they expect us to believe that not only are they beautiful, intelligent, accomplished, but we're supposed to love them and we're supposed to like them. So I thought there were two great main characters. We've got Ruby Bell and we have James Beaufort. Ruby is a classic trope. She is the outsider. She is the scholarship student. She is from a poor family. She has to work jobs to help out with her family. She does not belong in this prestigious institution, which is almost entirely populated by the children of the wealthy, the powerful, and the connected. So it's very clear that she doesn't belong right from the beginning. I should also point out another interesting quirk about this series. It's originally in German, but the book was set in England, and the school itself is a precursor to Oxford University. For some people, this may be a little bit jarring. It wasn't for me. I recently just got through Shogun, in which all of the characters that are supposed to be speaking Portuguese are speaking English. So you just need to suspend disbelief, and that's fine. What helps is the main characters are clearly very proficient in English, which is why when they're using English phrases thrown into the dialogue or when there are English names, they are pronounced correctly. So we have a cast that's clearly bilingual, and I'm actually surprised they weren't asked to do the English dub. So anyway, that's the backstory. So we've got Ruby. She is smart. She's clearly smart. She's very sassy. Um, she has elements of the trope that I don't necessarily like in this particular character. So, as well as being physically attractive and intelligent, she can be a bit mean and rude and snappy. But you can contextualize that here in the sense that she's very much an outsider, she's an interloper, and she feels alone. So, she's probably more defensive than your average person. But all in all, I liked her as a main character. The second leading character is an equally difficult one to get right. That's James Beaufort. We've also seen him before. He's extremely handsome. He's athletic. He's extremely wealthy. He's the misunderstood rich boy. He, despite his wealth and privilege, he is himself a prisoner and a cage to the expectations of a demanding father and family line. We know that he's sexually experienced, that he's popular, his friends are obnoxious. Again, this is another one of those characters where normally you look at them and you go, oh, why would anyone like you apart from the fact that, you're rich and handsome? You're actually a jerk. You're not very nice. It's frequently easy to make them look toxic and stalkery. So, for instance, in Twilight, Edward always came across as a bit of a creeper when he was like climbing in the window and watching her sleep. I know that's supposed to be romantic, but that was kind of creepy. A lot of the times when this particular character is portrayed, the main male character often comes across as being stalkery, unbalanced, possessive, anger issues, the embodiment of toxic masculinity, and someone who seems fairly mentally unbalanced, and you probably wouldn't want to be around because they probably don't need an apprehended violence order put against them. It is extremely difficult to get this particular trope of a character done right. I actually think that the actor Damien, who portrayed James, did a really good job of playing James. So on the one hand, you get that initial dislike towards him. You're repelled by him because, he's not treating women well. He's arrogant. He makes assumptions about Ruby, and he's really not very nice. But as the trope goes, this is supposed to be chipped away. We learn that this is not the real him and that there is actually a really nice person beneath that who wants more and has sensitivity. And I was impressed because the kind of pretty boy that James was portraying is not something that I, as an adult, like anymore. But I did really think that he embodied a certain vulnerability and sensitivity and an understanding of himself that I really appreciated. The fact that the reason why there was such antipathy towards Ruby was also a little bit more explicable. In many of these storylines, they don't really explain why the main characters don't like one another because they're so keen to leap into the snappy dialogue, the antipathy, the manufactured enemies to lovers trope that they don't actually set up the reason why they might not have liked each other in the first place. In this particular story, the reason why there is an antipathy is because he's never even realized that she existed. The first time he knows about her, he incorrectly thinks that she is going to do something that is going to harm his beloved twin sister. He has a very close relationship to his sister, and as the story unfolds, we will see why it's so close, and we will see why he would feel such resentment and why he would become so protective of his sister. Their family is so toxic and awful that these two twins have basically become one another's family, and they're very protective of one another and they love each other dearly, and it is a genuine love. So therefore, when his sister tells him that Ruby is going to do something terrible to her, his first instinct is to protect her. He drops everything and he goes to protect her. There is a degree of plausibility about the fact that he would behave so badly. Equally, Ruby's response to the way he's treating her is very funny and it's also very realistic. He is treating her on the assumption that she's like everybody else at that school and everybody else that sucks up and kowtows to his family. She's not that sort of person, and we believe that, or at least I did. So that's a big part of why I was able to believe that these two characters were who we are told they are. We're not just told, okay, this is the sassy female, this is the brooding, misunderstood male. No, we see that this is who they are and we believe it. We also believe the relationship between the two of them is possible because they had really good chemistry. I felt like it was done really well. I felt like it was gradual enough. When we get the inevitable shift towards romantic inclinations and attraction, I believed it. I know some critics have said that it was very quick, but I believe that the attraction was probably always there, but it sort of manifested itself once some of their barriers fell away. The other thing which I really enjoyed is the fact that there was a great supporting cast of secondary characters. It is really usual in books like this that you have the two main characters and they are the only ones that matter, and everybody else is just a foil for them. Other characters don't really get their own storylines. other characters are very, very one dimensional, not fleshed out at all, and they're just a blur. Um, Lynn, her best friend, unfortunately does fall into the slight trope category of Asian best friend whose primary purpose is to sort of to talk about things with her. But I felt like she was fleshed out enough and she had enough of a backstory that she did move beyond that a little. So while Ruby's friends were potentially a little bit one dimensional, and I might have liked to have seen more about Kieran and Lynn, where her secondary characters really shone was her family. Her family is amazing. Her father, Angus, is a paraplegic in a wheelchair. Her mother, Helen, is a baker. And her sister, Ember, absolutely delightful, is a loving sister who supports her, and the relationship feels very genuine and realistic. So the Bell family, I loved. Frequently, you'll see in stories like this, the family is toxic. She's the only flower in a, you know, um, a garbage heap. There's jealousy with the sister. No, this is a very supportive family. It's very loving. They're poor, but you can tell that they love one another. And I particularly enjoyed the friendship and relationship between the sisters. I believed it. In contrast, James's family is probably a little bit more tropey. His father is a jerk. His mother is downtrodden and possibly has more of a heart, but still is implicit in the crimes of her husband because she does nothing to stop his mistreatment of his children. So they are a little bit cliched and stereotypical, but for this storyline, they kind of have to be because the story needs a villain and the father is it. So I didn't really have a problem there. Where James gets his fabulous secondary characters is in the form of his sister Lydia, who is complex and nuanced. She's not just a pretty mean girl, she's actually incredibly intelligent. She has her own storyline, she has dreams and aspirations. It's clear that academically she's very gifted, and commercially she appears to have a great deal of business sense and nous, and she has more drive and ambition to progress the family business than James does. Thus, Lydia herself is very much her own character with a storyline, with her own motivations. And even though I didn't like her when I first met her, you're not supposed to, she does subvert the trope of the mean rich girl. She does have a tropey relationship, but I can't really go into that unless I go into spoilers. So I'll skip that one. Amongst his friends that are in the lacrosse team, they are a little bit of a blur as well. But he does have one friend who does stand out from the rest, and there is a bit of backstory and character development there. And it was interesting. On the one hand, it's possible that the only reason we get the Alistair storyline is to have parallels with James's storyline and his need to have courage and all that sort of stuff. But it was also itself a standalone storyline, which was addressing some interesting nuances in relationships in that particular part of society. So that's with the secondary characters. Again, it's very usual that in this type of story, you'll have a lot of secondary characters, but their only purpose is to ask questions and follow the main characters around and talk to them about stuff. The fact that at one point Ruby and Lydia have a really good conversation that isn't just about men, that's about them and what they want. I love. That was a really, really good scene. There are conversations between female characters in this series that aren't just about the boys. Yes, a lot of them are, but there were actual conversations in which two characters were interacting and it was just about them and what they wanted and things that were going on in their life. Particularly the scenes between the Bell sisters. Really, really good. The next reason this series was really enjoyable was the acting. It was amazing. There was good acting all round, to be honest, from the main characters all the way down to the supporting characters. This is surprisingly unusual. In this particular genre, I think there's an assumption that the romance demographic is dumb, that we're willing to accept anything as long as you tick our trope and the people are pretty, and that's all you need. And to be honest, for many people, that's probably okay. But for me, I've become really, really picky about what I want in my romances. And these guys acted it out of the park. I don't know whether it's because these are German actors and they bring a different, like perhaps they are behaving in a very stereotypical, cliched manner, but I feel like I have now watched so many American romance movies and series that it's almost like what happens when you like photocopy a copy of a copy. It just becomes more and more faint and further from the original. So many of the actors that we seem to see in the network television series don't even seem to be playing real people anymore. They're just very exaggerated caricatures of what a real person was. The acting is not great, the chemistry is not there, and so it's very hard to be emotionally invested in those characters. The cast here is very sincere. They are acting their hearts out. They're not ironic about it. They are in the moment. They believe who they are, and I believe who they are. So I really think the acting is good in this series. There's also great music. Like sometimes I was giggling and it felt like a giant music video because there were so many, musical sequences and montages, but it worked really well. There was a fantastic combination of more modern music. I thought it was interesting that the pop modern music they used all had English lyrics. I don't know whether they changed that for international consumption or whether or not perhaps in Germany they just prefer English language lyrics. And the instrumental, the score was really good as well. There was nothing jarring. The music never pulled me out of the moment, and I think that's really important. In a lot of these romantic series, you you feel very manipulated by the music sometimes. Oh, this is the story beat, so it's this type of song. This is the story beat, so it's this type of song. I really felt like it was done very well. I felt like the music enhanced rather than distracted. It was filmed well as well. I'm not technical. I've never studied photography or cinematography. All I can say is that it looked beautiful. Where they shot it was beautiful. It was like they were at Hogwarts. They clearly found a lovely castle in Germany in which to film, and the countryside was beautiful. The actors were shot beautifully. So all in all, it was a very beautiful looking series as well. It didn't have that cheap and nasty look that a lot of series can have because they don't spend a lot of time on that because, it's supposed to be a romance. I feel like people frequently phone in the effort, as I keep saying, that they think as long as they tick all your romantic tropes, you're in. And no, you're not. So I've already listed a few of the tropes that I like and have been done well. So I do like the enemies to lovers trope. I do like the impoverished, disadvantaged female battling the odds. I've liked that. I like a genuine attraction overcoming antipathy trope. I do like the reformation of a rake trope when it's done well. Uh, there were a few other tropes in here that were okay as well. So there's the obnoxious friends, there are the pretty mean girls, there's the Ruby's father has a disability, and so they've got financial constraints. So there's that trope. There's the trope of them healing one another in a sense, like she saves him, he saves her in different ways, and they save each other. It could be seen as a little bit codependent and unhealthy, but I think it works quite well in the world in which they're in. I can't really go into a lot of the other tropes without actually revealing elements of the storyline, and I'd rather not do that. But all I can say is there are so many tropes that I like in this series. And what made me so happy was I felt like they did the tropes really well. What this meant is that I was emotionally invested and immersed, and I had a really great time watching it. A word of caution, there is sex. I wouldn't say that it's explicit or graphic as such, but it is definitely very, very sexy. Like it's a very, when we get to the sex scene, sort of by the end of the series, it feels earned. I was really happy to go there. Normally I'm kind of a fade to black kind of gal, but I actually really enjoyed seeing the progression of their relationship. And even the sex scene itself was done very, very well in the sense that by the time it happens, it's something they both want and it's something they both enjoy. And I felt like it was very tastefully done and it was very believable. Like, I believed it, even though I knew that these were two actors acting on a screen in front of me. But the performance was definitely very sincere. So, yeah, I'm really, really hoping there's a second season. But the other part of me is hoping that there isn't, because if there was a second season, what if it's really bad and then it sort of bleeds back and the suck fairy comes and visits this one? But if you haven't watched it, strongly recommend you give it a go.